First Sunday in August. Ooh, it feels like it's the first Sunday. Look at that. I'm already ready for football season. The first Friday in August. It's a football Friday. We're ready to go today. And also, if you had fun in hour number one, wait till you see hour number two. It's Donnie Rightside. It's Joe Ranieri. And as we welcome in the man, the myth, the legend. And by the way, this man gets carried every night on radio by Mike Carver. That's Joe Lisi Radio. Joe, how we feeling, baby? How we feeling?
What did I do to deserve this at 9 o'clock in the morning, guys? Unbelievable. Thanks for having me. And officially football season. There's no joke. This is it. Football is back, college and pro, for the next 6 months. Nothing better, guys.
No, it is fantastic. And I always say this too, Joe. We take a look at the future, and we just had our first preseason game. We understand how quick football season goes. We'll be talking Super Bowl. It'll feel like in a blink of an eye. So cherish these moments and have some fun. And yes, let the betting commence. Now, I want to start here. I was listening yesterday to Pro Football Full Circle on the radio. It was George Kurtz. It was Joe Lisi. And all I kept hearing was, we got to get these alt-overs in. We got to go 41.5 at FanDuel, 42.5, 43.5, 44.5. Maybe the best bet that I've ever seen, 21-17 final, not because they didn't want to score. The game ended prematurely due to suspension. Talk about the feelings in the room, Joe, that you had yesterday, knowing you had a golden ticket in your hand, and what happened there?
Oh, Donnie, it was reminiscent of the game back in 2003 with Ron Dane in Wisconsin going up against Jason Thomas and UNLV. They pulled the transformer before 55 minutes. I mean, that's it. The books were out there, creating a weather delay. It was unbelievable. I told Carver last night, we had 31 points in the first half, and I said, watch, something's weird is going to happen. They're going to, the lights will go out, everything. Something always happens in terms of the Hall of Fame game, the turf, something's going to happen. And sure enough, after I booked the 2-touchdown bet with Houston, that was plus 230. All of a sudden, after the 38th point, the rain came in. We never got it back. They voided the bets. I don't care. If football is back, that over was the right bet. We would have gotten it at 7-1. And it's unfortunate because both offenses were humming last night.
They were humming all right. I mean, where's that Brett Rippin been, Joe? Exactly. That would be absolutely fantastic. But when you look at it now, I don't know. Is there all of a sudden a battle for the number 2 spot here on the Bears? Are you a big Brett Rippin? You think he's the right guy to back up the rookie, that you can trust him? Or is Badgett? What do you do here if you're the Bears?
I mean, you go with which, quarterback performs in terms of game situations. For me right now, it would be Brett Rippin. Looked like he had a good handle of the offense. He extended that Houston secondary vertically, and the touchdown passes to Colin Johnson really stood out. But Davis Mills looks sharp as well, guys. That's the biggest thing, is that, a lot of these teams go in conservative in terms of these preseason environments, and I understand injury, but at the same time, you still want to develop the young talent to have them ready should a player or a starter go down. So I think it should be Brett Rippin. Colin Johnson, the former Texas Longhorn, looked great. Nice that he's getting back to where he was back in college. Never panned out with the Giants in Jacksonville. Hopefully he could stick with the Chicago Bears, guys.
How about this, Joe? An Eberflus team on pace for 40 passes in a single game here. Maybe a new leaf is turning over in Chicago. Before we get to some other statistics in that game, obviously the reason why a lot of us were watching last night was to see the new kickoff rules and how they played out in real time. And as they started the telecast off, it wasn't just like the public watching it. Other teams around the league wanted to see how it was going to play out. So let's start there. You see the opening kickoff and how it works. Are we liking it? Is it going to take some time to get used to it? What were your general thoughts on that last night, Joe?
Oh, I'm loving it, Donnie. We saw this in the XFL and the UFL in regards to spring football, and I think it brings special teams back. You saw every return man, for the most part, return the kickoff, and that's what you want to see. You want to see special teams back in the game because it could be a momentum changer, right? Punt returns, kickoff returns were always a part of, big wins, especially changing the complexity of a potential, team that's down or a team that's tied. That's what you want to see. And it gives an opportunity for second and third teamers to make teams now, right? Special teams and the kickoff is back. Guys aren't just taking it out and calling a fair catch at the 25-yard line. So I love it, guys.
When I looked at these rosters yesterday, before everyone announced, of course, that no starters would even sniff the field, which was expected here, Joe, is there two teams? You may not all year see two teams who are more loaded at wide receiver than these two damn teams here. Between DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank. I mean, you go down the list on these two teams' rosters from a wide, and now you just mentioned Colin Johnson also showing up here. I mean, these two teams are going to be throwing the ball a lot this year, are they not?
I believe so. I believe more Houston than Chicago. I still believe Matt Eberflus wants to win games 17-13 as opposed to 40-20. And now with Caleb Williams there, you should open it up, especially to get him that type of experience. There is no margin of error for the Chicago Bears. 8.5 win total. Mm-mm. They're expected to challenge for an NFC North, division title, and more importantly, a wild card appearance. So unless they open it up, I don't think they have a very good shot. Conversely, for Houston, you mentioned all the wide receivers that they have. John Mechie's there as well. Let's not forget him. I mean, the depth that C.J. Stroud has now at his disposal, along with Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield that can catch the football as well. I believe Houston's offense is going to be explosive. Maybe I'm curious to see where we book all these totals for C.J. Stroud and Houston right now. He blew right through them last year. Going to have to put them in the 48-49 area for much of their games.
By the way, if we'll take a look at maybe the head-to-head comparison, what the expectations on these two young quarterbacks will be. But just heading into the preseason itself, Joe, what are some of your thoughts as you line up on a preseason game? Caleb Williams is a rookie, hasn't played yet in the NFL. Do you think he should have got some snaps last night? Because for me, Joe Ranier and I were talking a little bit earlier. You have to start the entire 11. Because people don't understand, why is he getting any snaps? We're not putting him out there with third-string guys that aren't going to be on the football team as your franchise guy over the next 10 to 15 years. But what are your thought process behind a young quarterback getting extra reps in the preseason? Do they need it or not?
You see, I think Caleb Williams needs it. And I understand not putting him out there with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. But, this is a team that really, again, has to make the playoffs. The pressure's on Matt Eberflus. And from what I saw Caleb Williams last year, especially in the game against Notre Dame, there were games where he didn't and failed to step up. 3 interceptions, tailed off towards the end of the regular season. And again, even though he's got the physical attributes, he needs to hit the ground running. There is no margin of error. I keep saying it because Chicago is supposed to win 9 or 10 football games. If you didn't open up the offense or allow Justin Fields to open it up last year, you got to do it with Caleb Williams, and you have to do it in the preseason. So you can't wait till week number 1 and say, we'll work out the kinks or we'll work out the weaknesses then. You have to do it now. I'm expecting next game he gets a lot of reps.
I'm not a big Caleb Williams guy, Joe. I don't know what you think. The hype around this guy is laughable. Don't forget, Stroud, nobody was even talking about Stroud after he fell down the draft board, right? And look what, that was perfect for Stroud. What they are blowing towards Caleb Williams here, it can only go one way, Joe. It ain't going to go up. It can only be disappointment. And I am worried about this Bears team here. What, are you a Caleb Williams guy?
No, I mean, again, I think he's got the physical attributes. I think the best quarterback in this draft class was Jaden Daniels, and I'll stick to that right now. Caleb has the first-round talent, but I'm with you. I'm selling Chicago the whole season.
As Joe Lisi would say, the Chicago Bears have a gutless head coach here, and we'll see how it plays out in 2024. Let's take a look at the matchups between these two teams. There are a lot of similarities with quarterback play, offensive explosiveness, and how these two teams will factor on possibly making the playoffs. Football Friday? Yeah, you said it. We'll be right back. More fun on the way. Hour number 2 of Football Friday here. It's Donnie, Joe, and Joe. And there's no better than to talk to Joe Lisi here when we're lining up an NFL season that's on the horizon. And what we saw yesterday, just a slight little appetizer. Now, if we do bring in these two teams from yesterday into the equation, it was an entertaining first half before the rains came in and stalled this game out. We got to look at the new kick returns. We'll see how they play out during the season. But I want to take a look at these two teams because there are similarities. a young quarterback with a lot of hype coming in. C.J. Stroud last year, top 2 draft pick, we expected some good things out of. I don't think anybody expected him to be in the MVP race towards the end of the season, winning big football games on the road, winning divisions and playoff games. He did that last year. But Joe Lisi, I want to bring you into the conversation on this. Does what C.J. Stroud did last year put more expectations this year on Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I think it does, Donnie. I think that's why you're seeing the 8.5 win total. I mean, 8.5 win total to me would have been if Justin Fields would have come back as the starting quarterback. He won 7 games last year. He obviously gutted out some games, had some big performances, and he's still an experienced quarterback. Caleb Williams having an 8.5, 9 win total is eerily similar to just hit the ground running, throw for 4,000 yards, and 25-plus touchdown passes with no growing pains. And that's similar to what C.J. Stroud did last year. But I think we're forgetting about the other quarterbacks that were taken in the first round and how they struggled, and rookie quarterbacks in general, how they struggle with new teams. And again, we have a very conservative head coach in Matt Eberflus that failed to open up the offense to really allow Justin Fields to shine and put playmakers around him. And now with Caleb Williams, you're expected to do that this year, not just to make the playoffs, but to save your job. So that is the expectation right now. This team goes 6-11. Matt Eberflus is not going to be the head coach next year. So they're going to be right back to where they started, with Justin Fields at the end of the regular season and making a decision on that. That's bad for Caleb Williams' growth, and that's bad for the organization as a whole. So I agree with you 100%. This number is evident because of the success that C.J. Stroud had last season.
So we talked a lot about the wide receiver room in both of these teams, but can I tell you, Khalil Herbert for the Bears, who is now, people understand, DeAndre Swift is really going to be the lead guy. But having a guy like Khalil Herbert, and did you even remember Cam Akers? Because he's out there running all over the place, Joe. He's making cuts. We forget that Cam Akers, when healthy, was a difference maker here. The running backs on both of these teams, I think, are going to play huge roles this year. That's a hell of a Bears combo there, having DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert.
Oh, absolutely. Khalil Herbert was very productive at Virginia Tech, and he's a player that can catch the football out of the backfield. Roshan Johnson is there as well, the big back that can get the tough yards between the tackles to spell DeAndre Swift as well. So I think the Bears are very set in regards to the running back position. You look at Cam Akers last year. I mean, he hurt his Achilles with the LA Rams, hurt it last year against Minnesota in week number 9, and he looks very sharp. If he plays the way he does throughout the preseason, that's going to be a player that you can count on to spell carries for Joe Mixon, and he can catch the football as well. So another added weapon for C.J. Stroud. That's what you want to do. You want to build up these guys heading into week number 1, so you have diversity, and more importantly, you have players you can rely on down to make a playoff run.
Yeah, I think that blueprint is now pretty much solidified. When you get a good, young, talented quarterback, you don't wait on him to get good and try to find his way. You get players around him to help him get good at a faster clip. Now, if we are talking about the Houston Texans, loved what they did in the offseason. You had a couple nice trades that you made. Obviously, Hunter comes over as defensive end. Fantastic move. But more importantly, you get a guy at wide receiver to add to that already talented wide receiving core in Stephon Diggs. Who knows if he's going to be the dominant Diggs that we saw 2 to 3 years ago as opposed to what we saw down the stretch, but I do think good things are here. Joe, I want to ask you this question. Team win total 9.5 this year for the Texans. I look at that number because it's hard to find anybody that's down on the Texans. If you look last year, they finished 10-7. They won the division. The number 9.5, boy, I think that is a sharp number. So is there any doubt in your mind that the ascension is here for the Texans? They win 10-plus games, or how can this go off the rails a bit where they take a step back and maybe win 8 to 9 games and not even the division?
Yeah, I think injuries, Donnie, right? That would really curtail Houston's efforts to potentially win 10 or 11 games, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball as well. I believe in DeMeco Ryans, year number 2 in terms of his scheme. I think he could elevate Will Anderson and that unit up to potentially a top 15 unit. It's going to come down to, can C.J. Stroud stay healthy? I think there's no doubt he erased all the doubts last year. I really believe he is one of the best quarterbacks in the AFC. I don't put him up there yet with Josh Allen, obviously Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes that won 3 Super Bowls right now, but he's on that trajectory, right? I mean, he can stretch defenses vertically, and the biggest thing for me about C.J. Stroud, Donnie, is the fact that he maintained his poise and composure. He didn't get rattled in certain situations. In the playoff game, he stepped up against one of the better defenses in the AFC and torched them early, and to have Stephon Diggs now to warrant double teams and take it away from Nico Collins, that could be his biggest attribute outside of catching passes.
You worried at all about the sophomore slump? Let's face it now, a year of tape for defensive coordinators here, JoJo, on Stroud. We're going to learn a little something about him. I mean, no doubt he's good, but they are going to be game planning in a big way against him. And are you confident enough he can overcome it? Because it feels like a lull is coming at some point this year.
It seems that way, but I believe in him. And again, you saw him challenge Georgia in the semifinal playoff game. That was his coming out party. And then you saw what he did in the playoffs. I don't think there's going to be that much of a drop-off in terms of productivity, especially now when you have multiple weapons. He could check down at every level. Running back, tight end with Dalton Schultz, he has every level of the passing tree covered as it relates to this roster. So I think he's going to be just fine, guys.
Houston Texans to make the playoffs, a -210 price. The Chicago Bears to make the playoffs, a -104 price. Big things expected for both of these young quarterbacks once again in 2024. But let's talk about good quarterbacks and injured feet next. Oh boy, the Chargers in a bit of trouble. We'll talk about it.
The silver and the bronze. I give you Canada, France, Germany, Serbia, and Australia.
Germany, more so than Canada. I think that their talent, it's a little more tiered. You know what Dennis Schroeder's capable of, Franz Wagner, another player, Daniel Tice steps up, and Mo Wagner as well. They're built to really take advantage of the mistakes that Team USA makes, and they can make the effort plays.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
That race for the Cy Young, pretty much as equally compelling and intriguing as the race for the wild card spots in the National League.
And also keep in mind, this team doesn't pitch the entire season, so his ERA gets affected much, much more if he has a poor outing than, let's just say, Chris Sale or Zach Wheeler that's been there all season long. This would be a fun one to watch it play out, but the big loser last night were the Phillies and Zach Wheeler.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Hopefully they learned their lesson. Hey, this ain't the NBA, bro. You don't have 6 fouls, and they will check you on this stuff. And Brooks has a reputation coming into this. You can tell the refs are watching them, and they were on him all the time.
This was 10, 12 years ago. Canada playing Greece with that type of lead that they had. They probably would have mentally crumbled and lost that game to Greece by 3 or 4 points in the final minute of that ball game.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Talking football on a Friday morning here on the early line. Get used to it, people. It's only the beginning. Over the next 6, 7, 8 months, it is going to be fantastic. Sooner than later, we will be handicapping regular season football, playoff football, and right through to the Super Bowl. But injuries already creeping up in the preseason, I should say, before we even get to the preseason. So let's bring in here once again Joe Lisi, Joe Ranieri, having fun on a Friday. but injuries never a fun thing. An Adam Schefter tweet yesterday, Chargers announced Justin Herbert was diagnosed with an injury to the plantar fascia in his right foot. Per the team, quote, doctors have recommended approximately 2 weeks in a boot, followed by a graduated return to play protocol. So just starting there, you're getting ready for your season. It's a new regime, Joe Lisi. Boy, this is bad news, because if your quarterback is not going to run that new offense over the next couple weeks and expected just to be parachuting in September to play, this isn't a good start for Harbaugh here.
No, it's not, and I've had that injury, and we talked about it. It is very painful, could linger throughout the regular season. I'm shocked, guys, that this team has a price better than the Cleveland Browns, a team that made the playoffs with the first-year head coach, Jim Harbaugh, get him confused with his brother, that won a national championship with Michigan. How they're plus 102 or right there, almost even money to make the playoffs is mind-boggling to me. I don't even think they're the second-best team in the AFC West. Jim Harbaugh is going to weed out the players that fit his roster and don't fit his roster. He's going to bring back physicality to the offense and defensive lines, and that's not a one-year fix. That's a 2 or a 3 year fix. And now that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are no longer on that roster, and Austin Eckler, I think there's going to be growing pains in year one. So, again, I'm selling the Chargers along with the Bears. I don't think they make the playoffs this year. I think Jim Harbaugh is the right coach, but this is a huge blow to the offense, having Justin Herbert out of preseason right now.
It's not even close. I mean, you got Greg Roman, right? Your new OC. You got the new coach Harbaugh. You have an entire new wide receiving core, right? And now all of a sudden you're gone, nowhere to be found. Let's just say, Joe, that he spends the next 2 weeks in the boot, which means he won't be out of the boot and won't be able to gradually start practicing until at least August 15th or 16th. Their final camp practice is August 22nd. The season opens September 8th. If there's any setbacks, how in the hell is he going to be ready for game one in the season? You better brush up on Easton Stick's knowledge, I guess, here.
Yeah, Easton Stick was a train wreck last year. I mean, absolutely. Look at that game against Las Vegas where they got blown out. He was absolutely atrocious. So, again, this isn't North Dakota State. You know, you're not playing inside the dome. You're playing now with Jim Harbaugh that is expected to win at least 9 or 10 games. Again, I think Justin Herbert will play potentially week 1, week 2, maybe if they keep him out, but it doesn't matter. It's still that they have such a high win total and such high expectations in year number 1 with a complete new offense and defensive scheme. And this team had one of the worst defense under Brandon Staley. Remember him, coach of the year? He's gone. It's unbelievable in terms of the expectations that we put on the LA Chargers, and all they do is fail. I'm sorry, guys, selling Harbaugh in year number 1.
I do think Harbaugh is going to have success once again in the NFL. Basically, he's been successful everywhere he's gone. But the one thing that we talk about, too, with the Chargers is, over the past couple of years, the talent, Joe, has always been there. We just kept asking, well, outside of the kicker that could never make field goals down the stretch, which was certainly an anomaly, we just need a coach that's going to put us in the right position and let the talent take over. Were you surprised that he came in and changed that talent drastically right off the bat, as opposed to just giving it a run with the players to evaluate? Or were you happy the fact that he came in and made those major changes to get his guys in there and his right of way going immediately?
No, I thought it was a great move, Donnie. And I'll throw another team in regards to Denver and Sean Payton that thought he could just sprinkle the pixie dust on the Denver Broncos and take them to a playoff appearance. He saw the hard way in regards to now he's in a complete rebuild. Same thing, I think, with Brian Daboll and the New York Giants, overexceed expectations with the talent that they had, as opposed to ripping it down and starting from year 1 the complete rebuild. Jim Harbaugh is doing it the right way. That's why I agree with you. Long term, he's the right coach for the job. It's just that in year number 1, the expectation is there to make the playoffs, and that's why I'm selling. It's going to take a couple of years to get his guys and instill the culture in the locker room, and that's exactly what the LA Chargers need, guys.
We could talk football all morning long, but Joe Lisi's got some pressing needs a little bit later. Make sure you catch them on Pro Football Full Circle, and also the anchor, as we like to say, on Carver and Lisi. That's Joe Lisi right there. Catch him at night as well. We love Joe Lisi around this network. Thanks for joining us today on a Friday. Good luck on the rest of your day, and enjoy the weekend here. Much more to come right here on the Early Line.